A 38-year-old certified cave diver and her former cave diving instructor planned a day of fun diving together in Sistema Sac Actun. With the plan all set, the dive went according to plan until the instructor looked back at a certain point and couldn't find his dive partner. Sistema Sac Actun is an extensive underwater cave system located along the beautiful Caribbean coast of the Yucatán Peninsula in Mexico. The cave system stretches out with its passages reaching to the north and west of the city of Tulum, a popular tourist destination. This intricate and mysterious network of caves was first discovered in the 1980s and is a true natural wonder. Under the dense jungle, the caves twist and turn, hiding incredible chambers that are decorated with stunning formations of stalactites and stalagmites. The Sistema Sac Actun is part of the Yucatán Peninsula, which is a region known for its rich geological history. The caves were formed on a sedimentary platform composed of rocks from the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras, with a thickness that can reach up to 11,483 feet. The Sac Actun cave system stretches over an incredible distance of 215 miles. This makes it the longest underwater cave system in the entire world, a title that only highlights its remarkable size and complexity. Not only is it the longest underwater cave, but it's also the second longest cave system of any kind on Earth, with only Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, USA being longer. The Sac Actun cave doesn't just cover a large area, it also goes very deep. In some places, the cave system delves as far as 328 feet beneath the surface. Within these depths, the cave's intricate passageways and crystal-clear waters create a mesmerizing world that is hidden away beneath the ground. Over time, the roof of the cave in some areas has collapsed, creating what are known as cenotes. In the area around Sistema Sac Actun, more than 220 cenotes have formed due to these roof collapses. Amy Arriaga was born on December 17, 1977, in Bakersfield, California, and was 38 years old. She was the daughter of Tom and Mary Arriaga. Amy had a deep, unconditional love for her family that was clear to everyone. Every day, she made sure to stop by her dad's house to check on him, especially after her mother Mary passed away. After her mother's passing, Amy made it her mission to ensure her father Tom felt loved and well cared for. She was incredibly proud of him, and she often shared stories about him with her friends. Amy's family was her top priority, and she especially loved her 12-year-old niece, Brioni, as if she were her own daughter. They shared many adventures together and dreamed of many more to come. Amy Arriaga was a committed school teacher in the United States, where she taught in Wasco for 13 years. During her time there, she taught 5th and 6th grades English language development, and for the last 3 years, she taught 7th grade science. Amy was an inspiration to her students. Outside of teaching, Amy was passionate about diving. She spent all her vacation time pursuing this hobby. She had gone diving in Tulum and Playa del Carmen many times. Her last Facebook post, dated November 21st, showed her diving with bull sharks in Playa del Carmen. On Saturday, November 24, 2016, around noon, went on a cave diving exploration in Tulum, Mexico, just a few weeks before her 39th birthday. She had been a certified cave diver for over a year and had plenty of experience diving in that area. Amy and her former cave diving instructor, Alessandro Morano, planned a fun day of diving together in the Sistema Sac Actun. They were going to start their dive at the Grand Cenote and return to the same spot. Amy asked Alessandro to take some pictures and videos during their dive to share with her family and friends back in the USA, so they could see what she was up to. Amy had completed her Intro to Cave Diving course in November 2015, and since then, she and Alessandro had done around 30 dives together. Alessandro had been her instructor for several courses, including open water side mount course and full cave course. Throughout all these training sessions, Amy performed exceptionally well, demonstrating her skills and passion for diving. They officially finished her cave diving training on November 24, 2016. For this particular dive, they carefully planned everything in advance. Amy and Alessandro decided that she would be diver number 1, leading the dive the entire time. The plan was to follow the upstream line, and once they reached the end of that line, they would use a reel to connect to the Kuzan Na loop line. Just a few minutes ahead, they would make another jump to the right to connect to the end of the loop line. They also agreed on a safety plan. If they reached the Kuzan Na jump line using the rule of thirds, which is a common safety rule in cave diving, they would remove the jump and head back toward the exit, following the same line they had used to enter. This plan ensured they had a clear and safe path to follow during the dive. During the dive planning stage, Alessandro took the time to remind Amy how they would navigate the circuit, just as she had practiced in the final days of her cave diving training, like when they had completed the circuit in Cenote Minotauro. He also made sure to point out some important safety details. He reminded Amy that Cenote Hotul, located very close to the Kuzan Na loop gap, could always be used as an emergency exit. This cenote is easy to find because natural light shines through the opening, helping divers locate it. Further ahead on the left side, there was another small cenote called No Name. Although it wasn't as easy to spot from the line as Cenote Hotul, it was still possible to see it using their primary dive lights. They also discussed and agreed on a few important details before their dive. They decided on a maximum depth of 40 feet to ensure safety. Amy and Alessandro agreed that if they didn't reach their jump reel, which they planned to install at the beginning of the loop, using only 1/3 of their gas supply, they would turn around and follow the same line back out of the cave. Amy was very thorough in her preparation. She checked the pressure in her tanks and carefully noted down the return pressure, estimated time, and depth on her slate. This way, she had a clear plan in place. Before they started the dive, Amy and Alessandro did a gear check on the surface to make sure everything was in order. As they had agreed earlier, Amy would be the leader for the entire dive, with Alessandro focusing on recording videos for her to share later. One important thing Alessandro made sure to review with Amy was the lost diver drill, something they had covered during her cave course. He emphasized that if she ever felt uncertain or lacked confidence in searching for the other diver, she should prioritize her safety and head out of the cave immediately. This careful planning and attention to detail showed how much they both valued safety and wanted to ensure everything went smoothly during the dive. The dive began at 11:26 a.m. Alessandro started by setting up their primary reel from the open water to the cavern line, making sure not to disturb any other divers who were on cavern tours. They were the first team to enter the cave, and there were no other lines connected to the cave line before theirs. Alessandro placed a marker, known as a cookie, on the line and reminded Amy to take the lead, as they had planned. A few minutes into the dive, they reached a point where the line made a 90-degree turn and saw arrows pointing in both directions. This was at the Paso del Lagarto jump. They placed another cookie there to confirm their exit point. About 25 minutes into the dive, they arrived at a gap in the line. At this point, Alessandro showed Amy the natural light coming from Cenote Hotul, indicating an emergency exit. Amy checked her air supply, depth, and time before signaling to Alessandro that she was ready to cross the gap. Alessandro checked his own air, time, and depth and gave her the go-ahead signal. Amy connected the gap in the line, and Alessandro placed another cookie with his initials AM on it, canceling the arrow at the end of the line. Then they started laying a line toward the Kuzan Na loop. Amy connected the line and placed a cookie on it to mark their progress. A few minutes later, they arrived at the loop jump. Once again, Amy checked her air pressure, time, and depth, and Alessandro did the same. After confirming everything was correct, Alessandro gave her the go-ahead for the jump. Amy placed a white arrow with her name on it before the cave arrows and attached her orange jump line to it. She then connected her line to the start end of the loop line, put in a cookie, and asked Alessandro if it was okay. When he gave her the okay signal, they began following the loop line in a counterclockwise direction. When they reached the double arrow that pointed to the closest exit, Alessandro asked Amy about her air pressure to decide if they needed to mark the exit or if they could complete the loop in one dive. Amy reported her pressure was between 2,300 and 2,200 psi. Alessandro's pressure was similar, so he told her to proceed according to their pre-dive plan. As they passed Cenote No Name, Alessandro signaled to Amy and covered his lights to use the natural light from the cenote for his video recording. The cave line was on their left, and Cenote No Name was on their right. Amy was positioned between Alessandro and the wall. When Alessandro looked around, he couldn't find her or see her light. Shocked, he turned 90 degrees around a formation that was blocking his view, then swam around it, expecting to find her nearby. When he didn't see her, he followed the cave line, assuming she must be ahead of him. When Alessandro reached their jump line, there was still no sign of Amy. He thought she might have followed the line out and left the jump point to meet him as planned. So he waited there for 2 or 3 minutes, but she didn't appear. Since she wasn't showing up, he remembered from their training that if a diver didn't appear, it was best not to search for too long and to assume the other diver was ahead. He decided to recover their markers and line, prioritizing his own safety. While doing this, Alessandro noticed another jump reel with a yellow line installed next to theirs and connected to an REM marker from another team. He removed their reel and cookie, thinking Amy was ahead of him. This was a mistake, as he was so sure she was in front of him. He took away the gap reel and cookie, but left the primary reel in place. Then he quickly went to check if Amy was okay outside. He surfaced, but was disappointed not to see Amy. Worried, he asked a blonde girl, who appeared to be a guide, if she had seen a female diver with a blue helmet come out of the cave, but she hadn't. He immediately went back underwater and headed back to the cave, retracing their steps as quickly as possible. His air pressure at the start was about 16 to 1700 psi. He saw some lights on a shortcut and went that way, discovering it was the other team he had seen before. He wrote on one of their slates, asking if they had seen a diver with a blue helmet. They said yes, they had seen her about 5 minutes earlier as they were leaving the cave. She had been using a reel and had given way to them because they were exiting. They assumed she was diving alone. Hearing this, Alessandro swam quickly back to the gap and looked for any sign of Amy, but didn't find her. He then swam to the cenote surface, called her name 3 times, and got no response. He dived back in and returned to the gap, but realized his air pressure was now low, around 1,000 to 700 psi. This forced him to leave the cave. As soon as Alessandro reached the cenote entrance, he looked for Amy but couldn't find her. He got out of the water and started searching for someone who might have tanks he could borrow. He tried to call a fellow diver named Fernando with his cell phone, but the call didn't go through. He then put away his phone and grabbed one of his reserve tanks, which had 3,000 psi. At this point, he had about 1 hour and 47 minutes of bottom time left. Alessandro went back down alone at around 2:13 p.m. and followed the same route he had planned with Amy. He connected the gap and jump lines and set up the markers. This time, he did the jump from the permanent marker. He continued the loop in the counterclockwise direction, as initially planned with Amy. After passing the restriction near Cenote No Name, he found Amy's body lying on her back, face up, close to the line with one of her markers beside her. She didn't show any signs of distress. When he got closer, he saw that her regulator was not in her mouth, her tanks were empty, and her mask was still in place. He tried to help by placing his long hose into her mouth and pushing air in, but she didn't respond. and foam was coming out of her mouth. Immediately, Alessandro pulled Amy to the surface of Cenote No Name and dragged her head out of the water onto the sand. He removed her helmet and mask and tried to resuscitate her, but she didn't respond. 2 divers with back-mount gear arrived, and one of them also attempted CPR. A third diver, who was a former rescue diver, showed up and offered to help. He started giving instructions and asked Alessandro to follow him while the other divers carried the equipment out. When they reached the jump, Alessandro lost buoyancy, and one of Amy's fins got tangled in the cave line. At that point, Alessandro asked the rescue diver to hand over the body to him and follow. The diver agreed, and Alessandro took Amy's body to the surface of Gran Cenote after a 35-minute dive. When they reached the surface, Alessandro met some police officers and fellow instructors who were waiting. Feeling very sad, he handed Amy's body over to the authorities and waited to give his statement. When her family learned of her untimely passing, they found some comfort in knowing that she died doing what she loved. Saying that Amy lived life to the fullest is an understatement. She truly embraced every moment as if it was her last. Her beloved brother TJ said, "She lived her life to the fullest, understanding that existing should be an adventure, and that the wonders of the world were worth experiencing. She was an independent, fearless, strong woman." We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting cave diving story.